We're back to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Beach Lifestyle Celebrity segment on the Simply G Media Network. Again, you can go to my website, totaltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, and also simplyg.com. And I want to welcome my co-host and the founder of Simply G. He is Simply G himself, GJ Reynolds. GJ, how are you, man?
Doing fantastic, Neil. Another exciting interview.
Oh, we were having some interesting ones, and especially this is one that's you're a big fan of his, so go ahead and introduce him.
Well, our guest is, he played 8 years in the Major League Baseball. Started out with the California Angels and played with my hometown KC Royals, and then went on to finish out his career with the Toronto Blue Jays. Now he's coaching. He's one of 2 people to ever hit 2 home runs in 2 different games in the same World Series. And he gave us a lot of excitement in the early 80s, when the Royals went to the 1980 World Series, played against Philadelphia, and he was definitely a bright spot for that team, and it gave us a lot to cheer about. Please welcome to the show, Willie Aikens. How you doing, Willie?
Thanks, CJ. I'm doing okay. How about you?
Doing fantastic, and life is fantastic. It sounds like life's good with you now, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'll just start off with the first couple questions. So when did you know that you were good enough to play in the majors? When did you find out, like, you know what, I really believe I can get to the majors and have a productive career?
Well, you don't really know until you actually get there, because people can tell you, that you're a prospect and that you have a chance. But baseball, you have to go through the minor league system. And, I was in the minor league system 2 years and I think 2 months, and the Angels called me up to the big leagues in 1977. But at an early age, growing up in Seneca, South Carolina, my high school baseball coach, Willie McNeil, bless his soul, he's gone, He told me I had something special, that I was a good hitter, and that if I kept it up, I probably had a chance to play pro ball. But you have to get the breaks, and I was able to sign a football scholarship, and I played baseball while I was in college. And my freshman year in college, I was asked to play up in amateur league in Baltimore. And the guy I played for, he was a scout for the Orioles. And after my freshman year in college, my college dropped the baseball team. And I was fortunate enough to be playing for this guy, Walter Yount, who was a scout, because he told me exactly what I needed to do. And after that, he drafted me. But like I said before, you still have to work yourself up through the minor league system.
Well,
I did that.
Well, absolutely, Willie, and it's something that you have to pay your dues in certain ways, and you have to see what's going on in a lot of ways. And when you said when you're working your way up in the minors, did you really think that your rookie season at the Angels, did you think when you were playing in the minors that year that you were going to be called up to play for the Angels?
Well, my first year I played in single A, and I led the league in RBIs, and my second year I was double A. I led the league in home runs and RBIs, and I started out in AAA real hot. And I think one of the players got hurt. But back then, a lot of times when teams called young players up to the major leagues, they didn't give them a chance to play. So when they called me up, I didn't get a chance to play. I was just sitting on the bench, pinch hitting or playing maybe once or twice a week. And I wasn't used to doing that kind of stuff. And I struggled. So eventually, they sent me back to the minor leagues again, and I ended up playing well and doing okay. And the next year, 1978, I spent the whole year in the minor leagues again, but I led the league in home runs. So anytime you are playing in the minor leagues and you are a leader in something, teams, they notice that. And I was fortunate enough in 1979, I made the team out of spring training.
Wow, right to the majors and right with the California Angels, and that's a quite interesting story again, GJ. That when you're the best, you're going to get your opportunity. You got and what GJ knows a lot of times is specifically you got to persevere through those things, right, G? Isn't that correct, G?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
When I made the team in 1979, the Angels had just signed Roy Carew, 7-time American League batting champ, to play the same position that I played at first base. So coming out of spring training, once again I was on the bench and I wasn't playing. But one of the things that I tell the young kids today as a coach is that, hey, you have to come to the ballpark each day ready to play, because you never know what can happen to one of your teammates. And Roy Carew, after about a month into the baseball season, Roy Carew broke his hand. And when Roy Carew broke his hand, jumped for Fregosi, the manager, he called me in and he said, Willie, you are my first baseman now.
Huh.
So for the next 2 months, I got a chance to play, and I established myself as a major leaguer. So when Rod came back to play, they put me as the designated hitter. They put Don Baylor, who was the designated hitter at the time, in the outfield, and Rod at first base. So, it's all about getting an opportunity to play. And sometimes you get your opportunity to play because one of your teammates is struggling, or one of your team might have an injury.
Absolutely. And GJ, getting your opportunity, you talk about that a lot, don't you? Getting that opportunity.
Right. Well, Willie touched on it. You always got to be ready, and you just never know when you're going to get that shot. And when you get that shot, you got to be ready to take it. And that's what really separates those who have and perform and those who don't. They're ready. They're ready no matter whether they're playing or not, and they act as if they're going to play each and every day. And the same way in business. And Willie did that. And of course, he had a great start there with the Angels, and then he went on and played for the Royals and my hometown. And I even got goosebumps thinking about those times because those were such exciting times there in Kansas City. So, what was your fondest memory playing for the Royals, Willie?
Well, it has to be the 1980 World Series. I mean, that was the first time I was in the World Series, and I was the first player to have multiple home games. I hit 2 in Game 1 and 2 in Game 4. And my whole baseball career is based upon the 1980 World Series. When people talk about me, Willie Aikens, they talk about what I did in the World Series. And that's okay because a lot of guys have played 15 years in the big leagues, and they don't really have anything that set them apart in their baseball career. So I think the biggest moment of my life was playing in the World Series and having the performance that I had, 1980.
Absolutely, 1980, and every year you had great numbers when you were playing for the Royals, for sure. But during those times, Willie, again, and definitely you're going to touch upon that more in your book, so I know our listeners out there definitely have to purchase your book. When did you the situation occur that you got involved in using drugs? Give us specifically why that happened. Was it because of the pressures of baseball, or is it just based on hanging out the wrong crowd in certain aspects?
Well, it wasn't the pressure of being a professional baseball player. I don't want to say it was hanging out with the wrong crowd because when I started using drugs, I was hanging out with my teammates. I was introduced to a guy in 1981 in Kansas City, through one of my teammates on my baseball team. And he had met this guy, and he had been going over to this guy's house. So one day he asked me if I liked to get high, snort cocaine. And I had only done it once in a while before then. And we started going over to this guy's house. And, it was just a social thing after games. We would have some drinks over at his house, sit around and talk, and snort some cocaine. And before you knew it, we had 6 guys on our team going over to this guy's house, snorting cocaine and just talking and partying and stuff. So it became more of a social issue. I think it became acceptable to us as baseball players, even though we were doing something illegal. But it wasn't any difference than, going out after the game and having some drinks or something. We just went out after the game and snorted some cocaine. And eventually the guy that we knew, he got busted. And they had been watching him, and they had a wiretap on his phone. And we got caught because 4 of us had called this guy's house trying to buy drugs from him. And after the baseball season, they indicted him, and when they indicted him, they indicted myself and 3 other of my teammates. 1983.
And it's amazing, Willie, to know that this was not just happening in Kansas City. This was happening Major League wide. This is just not – this drug trouble problems for Major League Baseball players was not just a Kansas City thing, was it, Willie?
No, it wasn't. And, you know, I knew somebody on each team when I went into wherever it was at, Cleveland, Anaheim, Boston, wherever. I knew somebody on that team that was getting high. And they would, you know, turn us on, and when they came to Kansas City, we were turning them on. Just like, you know, steroids became the drug of late 80s, 90s, 2000. Back when I played, 70s and 80s, cocaine. I mean, it was just all over the league, and it was acceptable among the baseball players. And some of the players, you know, Pittsburgh Steelers, they got caught. Kansas City Royals, they got caught, and a lot of players got caught, but you never heard anything about it because they just watched it up under their table. But back then, cocaine was definitely the drug.
And GJ, from my research in this type of situation, athletes, in a lot of ways, things were kept private, what they were doing privately, GJ. And so what Willie had to go through, he didn't get the help really he needed because really publicly it was kind of hidden and it was accepted, GJ. And do you remember those times as well, G, just kind of hearing about these things happening, and it really didn't come out huge at that time when you were a Royals fan, did it, G?
Well, by the time it came out, I was actually in the U.S. Army and overseas, and so, you know, I got bits and pieces of it, but obviously, you know, it was definitely a Major League Baseball-wide thing, and then they, you know, obviously put the hurt on a lot of players, and obviously you suffered some penalties from that, and you know, I had to serve some time, and obviously that was probably a pivotal point. So from the time that you had your run in, where did you see that? Okay, you got a chance to turn things around.
Well, I got a chance to turn things around when I got traded to the Blue Jays. After we went to prison in '83. We got suspended from baseball for 45 days, too. So I wasn't able to come back and play until, like, May 15th, which put me behind everybody else. And when I went to the Blue Jays, I became a platoon player. I was only playing against right-handers. So I never was able to catch up. And I went up there, and I had a bad year. And 1984, I went over to Venezuela and played winter ball, but beginning of 1985, I think the Blue Jays had already made a decision that if I didn't get hot or play well the first half of the baseball season, that they was going to release me. And I never got hot. I was never able to come back and play as well as I had played before. And part of that was because I wasn't playing every day. I had become a platoon player. And mentally, it was tough on me. You know, I thought I was a player that should be playing every day, and I didn't want to accept that. So a year and a half later, 1985, I was out of baseball, and I wasn't able to find a job in the United States, so I ended up going to Mexico.
All right, when we get back, we're going to get more of Willie Aikens, and we're going to hear about the harder times. The times are hard with the drug use, but he's still a Major League Baseball player and a professional baseball player. But life after baseball, Willie made the wrong decisions. But when you hear more and more of this story, you'll find out that he overcame those difficulties to be back successful again with his book and managing and coaching and all those different things. So we get back more with Willie Aikens and GJ Reynolds. You're listening to Total Tutor Show, powered by the Simply G Media Network, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Simply G Media Network on the Beach Lifestyle Celebrity segment. You can go to my website, totaltutor.net, and GJ's website, simplyg.com. And the conversation so far is about choices, about talent. And it was an accepted thing, the drug use in Major League Baseball, as again, steroid use was, I would say, in the 90s and 2000. The difference was this drug didn't help you in performance. It was just part of life. Again, the 80s, and it'd be very interesting if off air, Willie could tell me a lot of players. I'd be shocked to know. I know a lot of Pittsburgh Pirates, the 79 Pirates, they had a lot of interesting people that did use cocaine, but again, a lot of things were covered up and things like that. But life after baseball, it kind of never stopped, Willie. When you have an addiction, it's very difficult to be able to go back to, I guess, civilian life in a lot of ways, away from baseball, and try to become a regular member of society. And you had that addiction, right? That made it very difficult, right?
Yeah, it did. After I got arrested in '83, I was clean and sober for about 3 or 4 years, and when I couldn't make it back to the major leagues, I made a decision that I wanted to start back drinking again. And I started back drinking, and my drinking led me back to my drug of choice, which was cocaine. And after my first year down in Mexico, a lot of people don't know this, but I had an offer to go over to Japan and play baseball. They offered me $300,000 on a one-year contract. And my problem was I had a criminal record. So when it came time for me to get my working visa, I couldn't get one because of that misdemeanor conviction that I had while playing for the Kansas City Royals. So I couldn't make it back to the major leagues. Now I don't have a chance to go over to Japan and play. So I decided to make a choice that, hey, I was going to live my life the way I wanted to live my life, and I started back using drugs. I became a smoker of cocaine. I played for the next 5 years in Mexico, smoking cocaine, messing with the girls, and going to the ballpark and playing baseball. 1991 was my last year, and I became a recluse here in Kansas City. That's what I did for 2 years. I smoked cocaine and destroyed my life. And Kansas City Police Department started an investigation on me. They couldn't find nothing, and eventually they sent a female into my house. I got drugs for her. They indicted me, went to trial in Lawson, received a sentence for 20 years and 8 months, man. Wow. Now, what do I do?
Exactly. And GJ talks about he had a life-changing situation happen to him in his book. G, again, was very depressed and close to suicide at that time, G. So you understand those hard, dark times, right, G?
Absolutely. And I look back now, and sometimes those hard times were actually what, defined someone. And I know from my case, it was definitely a place where it defined me and actually became a launching pad for really having some of the best years of my life and living a very productive and successful life and a blessed life. And obviously, you had to go into prison, and then all of a sudden a former player by the name of Hal McRae helped you rehabilitate yourself. So how did Hal come into play? And obviously that was the start for you to turn your life around and to live in a productive life again. So how did Hal come into that to help you?
Well, Hal was one of the guys, when I was a member of the Royals, when I was getting high, he talked to me and told me I needed to stop doing what I was doing. And I didn't pay him any attention. While I was incarcerated, Hal was the only player that I stayed in contact with, because the other guys, I wrote to them, I never heard anything from them. But, I really rehabilitated myself when I was incarcerated. And just like you said, it was a defining moment for me. I spent 14 years in prison, so either I was going to let it wear on me and become destructive as far as not rehabilitating myself, or I was going to do what I had to do, take advantage of the opportunity while I was incarcerated and straighten my life out, become a better father, stop using drugs, and gain a spiritual life. I think the most important thing that happened for me while I was incarcerated was I gained a spiritual life. And Hal McRae, after I got out in 2008, I had to find a job. I was at the halfway house, and Hal McRae called me up one day, and he put me in contact with this lady who owned a construction company here in Canton, Blue Springs, Missouri, and she eventually hired me and gave me a job. But Hal is somebody that I've always respected. I'll continue to respect him, and I'm blessed to have Hal McRae as a part of my life.
So, Willie, would you say, and it's interesting what you talked about when you said that you rehabilitated yourself, because we all have to. There's people in our lives that if Hal wasn't around, then did you think you'd have as much hope, do you think? Or you said you were going to turn your life around, but especially when you were in that halfway house when you got out, Hal really was a person that helped in that process of getting you back into baseball at one certain point, but ultimately to say that there's something more out there, that I still have opportunity, that people still believe in me, right?
Yeah, well, I took 3 rehabilitation programs while I was incarcerated. And I was stuck for at least 2 years because I blamed the undercover officer for me being in prison. My thing was that if she don't never show up at my house and ask me to get drugs for her, well, then I would have never gone to prison. Well, the thing is, if she don't show up at my house, I would have continued to do what I was doing, and I would have destroyed my life. But, I didn't realize that at first, that being taken out of that situation was a blessing in disguise, because the ends are always the same. You either go to jail, you either end up in an institution, or you end up dead. And at the time, I thought I was having a wonderful time, smoking cocaine and doing what I was doing, but I couldn't see that I was destroying my life. Being incarcerated allowed me to do an inventory of my life, and I was able to look back and find out what the foundation of my problem was. And it wasn't the undercover officer. The foundation of my problem was Willie Aikens, smoking cocaine and getting high and putting myself in a situation like that. I saw a lot of people get in prison, get out of prison, and get out and come back. And it's real sad. And prison won't rehabilitate a person. A person have to want to do it themselves. And, nobody else was in there with me except myself. And I took it upon myself to rehabilitate myself and find a spiritual life. And that's exactly what I did. Right. And since I've been on the streets, I've been able to continue my spiritual life. And I think the Kansas City Royals, my old teammate George Brett, took me over and he introduced me to Dayton Moore, the general manager. And I just think that, they felt like that I could be a gift to these young players in the organization, not only as a hitting instructor, but as a mentor to the kids. And I see it as a blessing. Doing 14 years in prison and getting out and being a part of the Kansas City Royals organization is just a blessing for me, and I'm very proud of that.
And I could see that you definitely wear the blue well for the Kansas City Royals, and you're a Royal till you die, as many players have that team that they definitely put their allegiance to. So, GJ, again, listening to this story, so powerful in making choices and finally moving forward with the difficulties that Willie had to deal with, and in prison, and to say, hey, you know what, I have to make a change.
Well, I'm listening. I'm listening to the story, and I just feel in my spirit, and I got goosebumps here, or God bumps, as some, my friend calls them, and to go from a young kid with great dreams and to achieve those dreams, and then play at the highest level, and then even play in the World Series. And then hit multi-home runs in 2 different games, and be at the pinnacle, and to fall down and be into the drugs and prison, and then to come out and say, hey, I still have life. It actually was a positive experience, and now I'm able to help other people, so maybe they won't go down that same path. Those are the types of stories I just love, and now you're coaching, in the Royals, farm system, and have an impact on the kids, and obviously you've come out with the book, and we never have said the book, Safe at Home, Willie Mays Aikens, and you can find it on Amazon or any place you can buy books. And Willie gives his contact information where you can find more information about him and his book. I'm going to pick that book up, and I look forward to sitting down with you personally, on one of my next trips to Kansas City, and get a signed copy. We'll trade books. But thanks for sharing your story, and just thanks for looking within and rising up, and to living a royal life, and so we're very happy to have you. So where are we able to find more information on you, Willie, and your book as well?
Okay, I have a website. It's WillieAikens24.com. Willie Aikens 24. That's my old baseball number. .com. You can purchase copies on Twitter, #WAikens, or Facebook. I'm on Facebook too. Those three things, and it's still on Amazon.com. I don't know how many stores still have my book, but Facebook, Twitter, and my website, WillieAikens24.com.
Well, absolutely, Willie. And what we end the show always with is, what is your 90-day challenge? We set goals and objectives with all our guests. GJ and I have our 90-day challenges. His is to have washboard abs. My 90-day challenge is to stay focused in growing my entrepreneurship and business. What would you say ultimately is your 90-day challenge right now, Willie?
Well, Neil, I don't have a 90-day challenge. I just have a today challenge. I've learned to live my life one day at a time, and I wake up in the morning and I praise God and I thank Him for another day, and I just try to live through today. I don't try and jump ahead and say, well, this is what I'm going to do in the next 90 days or something like that. I just take life one day at a time. I've got 19 and a half years of sobriety without a drink or a drug, and that's how I've handled that situation. And for me, that's the only way I can handle my life, is to live my life one day at a time. So the challenge for me is just one day at a time, and that's a lot easier for me.
Well, absolutely, Willie. Thanks for taking the time to come on the show and share your story, because it's a powerful one, and people out there need to know that there's still, even if you've fallen and you've made mistakes, that you always can come back. And what you shared, the most important thing is your faith. Seeing how important God is in your life, and that's what changed you. That's what made you say, I'm not going to have alcohol, I'm not going to have drugs. It's because you're living for God, and that's the key component for everyone's happiness. We could be striving after so many materialistic things, but when we choose to live our lives for God, we're in the best shape of our lives in so many ways. So, Willie, thanks again for calling, man.
Thanks for having me, Neil G, and thanks for talking to you. And that's the fact for me. Having a spiritual life has been a blessing, and it just allows the Holy Spirit to work inside of us and help us each day with the choices that we make. And I praise God for that. Thanks, Neil.
All right, take care, Willie. See you later.
Right.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
All right,
bye.
You're listening to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Simply G Media Network, and we'll be back in just a moment.